The Broken Bridge. One morning, a traveler set out to meet a master who lived beyond a wide river. He had prepared for many months, arranging his life so he could travel that far. He believed that, on the other side of the river, the questions he had carried for years would finally find their answers. So he planned everything carefully. Travelers told him that the master met everyone at exactly the same time, 30 minutes before sunset at the end of each week. He knew how many miles he had to walk and how much time it would take. He prepared his meals in advance to make sure he would arrive on time, carrying only what was necessary for the journey. He did not want extra weight to slow him down. He had planned 3 days for the journey. Along the way, there were 3 villages he needed to cross. His steps were steady with purpose. When he arrived at the first village, his timing was perfect. He sat comfortably at the entrance of the village to eat his first meal. He put down his bag and began to unwrap a rice ball. But just as he was about to take the first bite, a child appeared in front of him. The boy's eyes were full of panic as he pointed toward the forest. The traveler looked at him, surprised. Then he thought, "Perhaps I can at least see what happened." He wrapped the rice ball again and followed the child into the forest. The boy led him to a place that was further than he had considered to walk. His dog had been caught in a trap and was crying in pain. The child had tried to free him, but he was too frightened and too weak to open the trap himself. The traveler knelt and carefully tried to release the animal. It took longer than he expected. The dog was terrified and in pain and bit him several times before he could finally free it. At last, the trap opened. The dog limped into the child's arms, trembling but safe. The boy was so grateful that he insisted on taking the traveler to his mother's house. There, she thanked him warmly and prepared a meal for him. During the meal, her daughter joined them. She asked where he was going. When she heard he was traveling to meet the master beyond the river, her eyes lit up. "I have always wanted to go there," she said. "But my mother never allows me to travel alone." She hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Would you allow me to travel with him?" Her mother looked at her surprised, but she had stopped her so many times before, and this guy seemed like good company, so she finally allowed her. After resting for a while, they set out on the journey. When they arrived at the second village, the sun was already lowering and the traveler noticed at once that something was wrong. Smoke rose into the evening sky. People were running toward the center of the village, carrying buckets of water, shouting to one another in panic. The traveler slowed his steps. Ahead, a small hut was burning. Flames climbed quickly along the dry wooden walls, spreading toward the roof. The villagers were doing what they could, but most of them were old. Their bodies were no longer strong enough to fight the fire. Some could barely carry the water they rushed with. Others stood frozen, just calling out in fear. The traveler watched the cows and frowned. He had already been delayed once. His mind immediately turned to the road ahead. If I stop for every fire in every village, he thought, I will never reach the master in time. Beside him, the girl had already stopped walking. She looked at the smoke, then at the frightened people around them. Without hesitation, she began moving toward the flames. The traveler caught her arm. We should keep going, he said. There are others here to help. She looked at him almost in disbelief. Do you know whose house that is? She asked. He shook his head. That is old Thomas. She pointed toward the burning hut. He is the healer of this village. He has cared for these people his whole life. He asks nothing in return. When children are sick, he is there. When the old cannot walk, he visits them himself. Half the people here would not be alive without him. The traveler turned sharply toward the house. Only then did he see it clearly. The open door. The villagers calling his name. The fear on their faces. Someone was trapped inside. There was no hesitation after that. He dropped his bag and ran. The heat struck him before he reached the door. Smoke poured from the windows. The roof groaned above him. Someone shouted for him to stop, but he was already inside. The hair was thick and burning. He could barely see. He covered his mouth with his sleeve and surged through the smoke, calling out. At the back of the hut, near a fallen chair, he found the old healer collapsed on the floor. He was weak, coughing, barely conscious. The traveler lifted him, pulling his arm over his shoulder. The old man felt impossibly light, so small, so close to disappearing. The flames were spreading faster now. For one terrible moment, he thought they would not make it. Then, gathering all his strength, he pushed forward. They stumbled through the smoke and burst out of the door just as part of the roof collapsed behind them. The villagers cried out, hands rushed forward. They took old Thomas from his arms and laid him safely on the ground. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, the old healer opened his eyes slowly. A woman beside him began to cry. An old man dropped to his knees in relief. Children clung to their mothers. The whole village seemed to breathe again. The traveler stood there, covered in ash, his hands trembling. He looked at the healer lying safely among the people he had spent his life caring for. And a strange thought rose inside him. If I had not stopped, he looked at the old man's thin chest rising and falling. This man would be dead. This fragile life, old perhaps with only a few years left, suddenly felt immeasurably important. That surprised him. A part of him had always measured life by youth, by strength, by what still lay ahead. But standing there, watching that old man breathe, he felt something deep. He was genuinely happy that this man, who had almost reached the end of his road, was still alive. That night, the whole village gathered in the open square. Long wooden tables were brought outside, food was shared, wine was poured, someone brought a flute, another began to sing, music filled the night. Children laughed, old men clapped their hands to the rhythm, and women danced barefoot on the warm earth. Old Thomas sat wrapped in a blanket among them, smiling quietly as people checked on him again and again. The traveler watched him. Villagers came to thank him constantly, and he didn't quite know what to say. He sat beside the girl, watching the dancers move in circles beneath the evening sky. Its warm light moved gently across her face as she laughed with the others. Then she began to dance as well. She danced all night. Time passed unnoticed. In the morning, the traveler woke up early, ready to set foot back to the journey. But the girl was still sleeping. He thought she should be tired from the dancing, and he didn't have the courage to wake her up. So he waited, and waited, and waited. When she finally woke up, they had a nice breakfast offered by the villagers that lasted a long time. Old Thomas insisted on sharing tea and stories, laughing at how close he had come to leaving the world before finishing his soup. Then, at last, they returned to the road. The final village lay ahead, beyond it, the river. Beyond the river bridge, the master. As they walked, dark clouds gathered at the edge of the sky. A storm was drawing itself slowly over the hills. The wind grew stronger. Dust lifted from the road. Branches bent and whispered warnings. The girl walked beside him, holding her cloak tighter around her shoulders. After a while, she smiled and asked, "You traveled from far and nearly burned yourself alive to reach this master." She looked at him sideways. "What is it that you want to ask him so badly?" The traveler smiled faintly but shook his head. "If I speak it too soon," he said, "perhaps it will lose its weight." She smiled. "Or perhaps you are afraid it will sound foolish," she said. He did not answer. The wind pushed harder against them. Their steps slowed down. The girl tired quickly and had to stop several times to rest beneath the trees. Each pause made the traveler glance nervously at the darkening sky. Each pause reminded him of time. Still, they continued. By the time they reached the last village, it was already the end of the third day since he started his journey. The sun was already leaning toward the horizon, and there, just beyond the rooftops, they could see it, the bridge. Old, narrow, stretching across the river like a final sentence. On the other side, among the trees near the far bank, small figures were already gathering. The master would be there. The traveler felt his chest tighten. "We are just in time," he said. "If we go now, we can still make it." They quickened their steps. The bridge stood ahead, visible now between the houses, just a little further. Then a voice called out, "Please wait!" They turned. An old woman stood beside a small house, looking desperately at the roof above her. Part of it had loosened. A section of wood was lifting with the wind. "My son crossed to the other side this afternoon," she said. "He went with the others for the master's lesson. But the storm is coming, and he will not return before night. Please, it will only take a moment. Rain is coming any minute, and I cannot fix it alone." The traveler looked at the roof, then at the bridge, then back again. His whole body resisted. No! Something inside him said, "Not now." He had already delayed too much. The bridge was right there. The lesson was waiting. The roof could be fixed later. Before he could answer, the girl stepped forward. "I'll do it," she said simply. She looked at him. "You go ahead. You traveled a long way for this. Cross the bridge. I will meet you on the other side." The traveler stared at her. The wind pulled at her clothes. The storm darkened behind her. He imagined her climbing alone onto that roof. The wet wood, the strong wind, one wrong step, and suddenly the thought of crossing without her felt impossible. He let out a long breath. "Ah, no," he said. He placed down his bag. "I will help." The woman thanked him with relief. He climbed quickly, securing the loose beams while the girl held the ladder steady below. The wind fought against him. Rain threatened in the air. It looked longer than just a moment. When he finally climbed down, his hands were sore and the first drops of rain had begun to fall. "Quickly," he said. They ran toward the bridge. But when they reached the riverbank, they stopped. The bridge was gone. The old wood had given way under the force of the wind. Part of it hung broken in the current. The rest had already been carried downstream. On the far side, a few people stood staring back at them. They had crossed only moments before. The traveler stood frozen. Something inside him collapsed with it. He stared at the broken bridge in silence. Maybe one of those figures was the woman's son, safely across. At least he would receive the teaching. At least someone had made it. If I had not stepped away from my plans, I would be there too. The traveler said nothing. There was nothing to say. The storm finally broke. Rain came hard and sudden. With nowhere else to go, they returned to the village and took shelter in the nearest inn. Only when they entered did they realize it was the same house whose roof he had just repaired. The woman welcomed them inside at once. She brought dry clothes, hot tea, and said, "You will stay here tonight, no payment. The rain has decided for all of us." They sat quietly, listening to the storm against the roof. The traveler held the tea in both hands, staring into the steam. The girl said nothing. She simply sat beside him. After some time, the door opened again. An old man entered, shaking rain from his robe. He walked slowly, as though storms had never managed to hurry him. The woman looked up and immediately smiled. "Oh, it's the master," she said. "How come he's here?" The traveler lifted his head. The girl turned sharply. The master sat beside them, taking the empty chair. "Well," he said, "I went to buy vegetables before sunset, and the bridge decided I should stay here instead." He poured himself some tea. "Did you see what happened to the bridge? It collapsed before I could cross back. Thankfully, no one was hurt." He smiled lightly. "So now it seems I am trapped here with all of you. I suppose I will have to start teaching on this side instead." He laughed, amused by the situation. The traveler stared. He could hardly believe it. He had imagined finding the master far away on the other side of the bridge. Yet here he was, sitting right beside him. The girl smiled. Then she said, "We came for your teaching, but just as we were about to cross, the bridge collapsed." The old man looked at them both, and a quiet smile touched his face. But before he could answer, another man sitting nearby looked up from his cup. "The same happened to me," he said. "I came from the western road and arrived too late." A woman near the window laughed. "And I crossed off the valley only to end up here as well." Soon others joined in. One by one, they shared how life had delayed them, turned them around, or brought them there by some unexpected path. Without planning it, the whole room gathered closer. The inn became a small temple, rain on the roof, tea in their hands, strangers becoming students. At last, the girl looked at the traveler and said, "Go ahead, ask your question now." The traveler looked at the master and asked, "Master, how do I know if I have lost my path or if the path itself has changed?" The master looked at him for a moment, then he said, "You may choose your destination. But if in pursuing that destination, you lose your connection with life, with the people before you, then you may arrive exactly where you planned and still be lost." He lifted his cup slightly. "But if while walking toward your destination, you allow life to interrupt you, if compassion makes you late, if kindness changes your direction, if love delays your arrival, then life itself will carry you where you are meant to be." He smiled. Let life be your destination, no matter where you think you are going. The traveler sat in silence. The words entered him like rain entering dry earth. He saw again the first village. The child standing before him, eyes full of panic, pointing toward the forest. If he had ignored that boy, he would never have met the girl. He would not have saved old Thomas from the fire. He would not have shared music beneath the village lights or laughter beside the road. Perhaps he would have fallen with a broken bridge, trying to cross to the other side. Or perhaps he would have crossed on time, and he would be on the other side now, exactly where he had planned to be. And yet, the master would not be there. He would be standing there, wondering why arriving felt so empty. He would have crossed the bridge and still be lost. The traveler looked around the small room, the repaired roof above them, the warmth of the tea, the girl beside him, the villagers gathered close, the master sitting only a few steps away. And suddenly he understood. It was not despite the delays that he had arrived. It was because of them. None of it had taken him away from the path. It had been the path. He lowered his eyes and smiled. For so long he had believed wisdom lived somewhere far away on the other side of a river. But life had been teaching him the entire way. He looked again at the girl, smiling gently beside him. And looking back now, even if he had missed the lesson entirely, it would still have been a worthy journey. Then suddenly he laughed. "Who is hungry?" Everyone turned toward him. He reached for his bag. All the food he had so carefully prepared for the journey was still there, untouched. Through all his delays, still wrapped neatly inside. The rice balls he had measured so precisely, he opened the bag and shook his head, smiling at himself. He began passing the rice balls around. Soon everyone was eating, talking, and laughing together while the storm sunk against the roof. And there, in that small inn, with wet clothes, warm tea, shared food, and strangers who no longer felt like strangers, the traveler understood something simple. Sometimes, life takes you exactly where you need to be, just not in the way you planned.